Book review, The Glenn Pendlay Method by Seb Ostrowicz from Weightlifting House. I'm sorry if I said that wrong, Seb. I don't know, Seb, but forgive me if I pronounced your name wrong, which I probably did. Weightlifting House is a very popular, I think, podcast, and certainly on YouTube. As you can probably surmise, follows Olympic-style weightlifting. Who was Coach Pendlay? Well, what do I think about this book? So I've read a lot of books over the years, in training, about training, from heavy theory books like Super Training to very practical books like Joe Ken's Tier Method, which I highly recommend. Both of those books in different ways. And this is one of the reasons I formulated my own book, Foundational Weight Training. Check it out if you haven't already, which is a book that I think bridges the gap, which is what I saw was missing in the literature, is a book that talks about the physiology and the training theory, but then like, how do you actually program? Like that, I want to know both. I don't want to just, we talk about the art and science of programming. You look at my video on my channel, if you haven't already, on that very topic, is you need the science behind you, the science being anatomy, physiology, and those type of things, training philosophy, training theory, the gas model, all this stuff. But then you need the art. Is how do you manipulate these variables? Sorry, my voice is messed up. I'm just so excited. One of the questions I get from students and young coaches is, I feel comfortable to, the technique of what I'm doing, but the programming feels very uncomfortable, right? And that's because that's the art, right? The science needs to be there, but the art is when you have to do experiments. But every good coach is a great researcher. They just don't publish all their data, right? They don't want the other coaches to know it. And I've seen that across the board. Coach Pendlay is certainly in that category. I would put myself in that category, not because I'm an elite coach. I'm saying as a coach that understands that when things aren't working, you got to change them. And many times your athletes have already figured out the right way. And if you really ask them, like, why didn't you do it that way? Well, my legs were hurting and my knees hurt. And you're like, I wonder what I thought was right. And over time, you start to think about the physiological things that are happening to your athletes, and you realize, I overprogrammed that, or we're not seeing results, and my athletes are pushing harder over here at times. Maybe I should change. I've changed my philosophy many times. If you read, please don't ever read the first version of my book. It was terrible, but my philosophies from that book to the second one have changed. What I use to program has changed, not dramatically, but certainly in a way that has affected outcomes positively. You see this in Coach Pendlay's book. Okay, now I'm going to read the back of the book to start. This is what's in the book, the biography of Coach Pendlay. I'm going to talk a little about Coach Pendlay, Glenn Pendlay's philosophy of coaching, methods of strength training, athlete characterization, training cycle length, example cycles, squats from snatches, deadlifts, EMOMs, snakes and ladders, isometrics, bands, and I would put eccentrics in the two, eccentric, bands, learning the lifts, example programming. And Coach Pendlay died a couple years ago. He's 48 years old, a young coach. Arguably one of the greatest American weightlifting coaches in the modern era, okay? I'm not saying he's the greatest American weightlifting coach. There's some great American weightlifting coaches now. But in the era of YouTube starting up and getting exposure online and CrossFit exploding, Coach Pendlay was certainly the big names. He had Muscle Driver USA, which was a business before Rogue. This is Rogue before Rogue, okay? Along with Coach Bergener, right, was one of the more prominent names early on in the last 10 years in weightlifting. Had the professional weightlifting team, right? I think York was probably the first one, but his professional weightlifting team, the attempt at it ended up not working out, but he tried. He was all in on weightlifting, all in. And, one of the things I got from this book, for me, it was a little sad, is that he was so all in, he lost everything else, right? As a father, somebody who prioritizes his faith, his beautiful wife, and his kids. I feel this draw. I love the sport of Olympic style weightlifting. I could lose myself in it. And for a while there, I was going down that path, and I had to back out and say, I can't do this. I can't abandon my wife and my family, and certainly on my faith. So I saw that in this book too. Maybe you struggle with that in different ways, but you see a man that went all in on his sport. I'm not criticizing him for that. I'm just saying that's one of the things I saw as I read this book. But we can glean all the amazing things that Coach Pendlay discovered along the way in his journey when he went all in weightlifting. He was, I put him in that category of Louis Simmons for the Olympic style weightlifting, right? And they certainly knew each other. Early on he coached at Ripeto's place. And so this is a man who's been around those big names, again, as part of that original group in the last decade or so that have become prominent. This book should be on your shelf, period. If you are a coach, strength coach, a sport coach, personal trainer, I'm going to use it in my classes, the strength conditioning class. It's a great book, right? It's 195 pages or so. It's very well organized. It goes through the history of Coach Pendlay, but then it has very easy to read, practical examples, tables, figures that are very helpful, conceptualizing things. It talks about athlete categorization, which something I'd never really written down and thought of it in terms of athlete categorization. But what is a beginner? It has nothing to do with the total they're posting. It has to do with their rate of progression. So a simple ramp, and keep ramping, keep progressing. You see some practical program, Ripeto's book. Just keep hitting PRs until you run out of gas, and don't use the advanced programming techniques until you need them. Okay. The snakes and ladders, auto-regulation. All right. Auto-regulation is big now, velocity-based training, things like that. I mean, these are things that were already programmed in here just on makes and misses. Hitting high-intensity loads and thinking about clean athlete versus athlete. He tutelaged, Coach Pendlay was under the tutelage of a Soviet coach. And as we know, they were heavily on PEDs. But how do you do this in the American system with clean athletes? Well, Coach Pendlay did a lot more intensity-based, right? He loved the fives. Okay, 5x5 training has been popular for a very long time, but he loved the fives, and you read about why in here and why physiologically that makes sense for fives to be so effective. Experiment with bands, isometric holds, eccentric. I mean, these are all things that I've seen in my own coaching, I've read about over the years, seen conceptualized and done in my own programming, seen the success of them. All these effective training approaches, they're all in this book. Again, presented in a very clear way with examples. I think you'll find this book extraordinarily valuable, even if you're not a coach or a personal trainer. If you just want, reflect on the programming you're doing. You don't always have to write new programs, right? We always try to reinvent the wheel here. If you're evaluating a program, they'll get a program from Catalyst or something like that, and then read this book and look at how maybe you could tweak it. You'll see a lot of common themes between these two too, because great coaches, right, start to notice the same thing. I've noticed the same things. I'm not putting myself in the category of Greg Everett or Glenn Pendlay. I'm just saying, as if you've been coaching long enough and you pay attention, you will start to notice trends and things that aren't working. And a good coach will adjust to that. This is not a book just for elite athletes. Even though Coach Pendlay worked with elite athletes in sport of Olympic style weightlifting, it's not just for Olympic style weightlifters. It's for, again, any coach, personal trainer, or somebody who likes to move the barbell. You will gain information from this that you did not have before. There were things in here, I've been doing this for a very long time, that there weren't things that are necessarily new to me, but they were new ways of thinking about them, and things that I'm going to adjust my programming a little bit because of it. And that's saying a lot, because of all the books I've read and all the things I've thought. Again, not because I'm great by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just saying that's how effective this book is. So go pick it up, the Glenn Pendlay Method from Weightlifting House. You can get it on Amazon. I'll leave the link in the video description. Of all the books I've recommended thus far, I'm trying to remember some of it. Probably Coach Ken's book is in this one, or one of the main ones when it comes to practical. But this one is better than Coach Ken's book just because it has more of the physiology behind it. The Texas Method, right, is in Coach Ken's book. Well, Coach Pendlay was arguably the one that invented the Texas Method, at least what we call the Texas Method of programming. If you don't know what that is, pick up the book and read about it. All right, I'll quit talking in circles. I'm sure I'll forget. I'll kick myself later because I didn't talk about this in that book, and I don't want to give all the contents away. I just want to say go pick it up. It's worth the money you spend on it. Most books are not. No, that's not fair. Many of the books in programming are not worth the money spent on them. They're just repeating the same thing. Maybe you'll find my book is the same way. But this book, again, you're learning from a great coach. Even if you don't think he's the greatest or you disagree with some of the stuff, still there's some concepts in here I think you'll draw from that are effective. All right, that's it. If you like this video, like it. Hit the thumbs up button. Subscribe. Trying to get up to 100 subscribers, big time, right? I'd love to get to 1,000 eventually, but 100 subscribers. Check out my other videos, book reviews, general clubs, rants, training videos. I'm putting up all kinds of stuff. I'm just having a good time doing this. I hope you're enjoying the content, and if you do, share it with somebody. Let them know that what you're watching, and there's this crazy guy in Oklahoma that's putting up videos that they may enjoy. All right, until the next one.